She left the hospital the day he was born. The nurse put the baby in my arms and said, "He's yours for now." I raised him. 8 years. Bottles, bedtime stories, first day of school. Then my daughter came back with takeout and a smile. "Just sign these school papers, Mama," she said. I did. A week later, something felt wrong. Calls I wasn't getting, doors that felt half closed. And then I saw a message on my phone I wasn't meant to keep. That's when I knew what she'd really done. Before I show you the text that changed everything, tap subscribe, tell me where you're watching from, and please share this with one person, because you never know who might be living through this right now. Now let's get into it. My name is Bernice Holloway, and if you'd asked me 10 years ago where I'd be now, I never would have said raising a child again. I was 59, working part-time at the library, dreaming of retirement. Then Micah came into my life, wrapped in a hospital blanket, no father at the door, and no mother willing to take him home. My daughter, Sierra, had given birth that morning and left before her epidural even wore off. I'll never forget the nurse's face when she handed me the baby. "He's all yours now," she said gently, like she was offering me a gift. But it didn't feel like a gift. It felt like a responsibility, a test, a second chance at motherhood under the worst possible circumstances. I named him Micah because it meant, who is like God? And that boy, he saved me as much as I saved him. Sierra called me once that week, said, "I just need time, Mama. I'm not ready." Then she disappeared. Months passed, then years. She sent one birthday card when Micah turned 2, with no return address. I stopped waiting. Micah was my whole world. I gave him everything I didn't know I had left. I warmed bottles at 2 a.m., read bedtime stories till I was hoarse, learned to braid hair when he begged me to style his doll's head. I sang lullabies into the early morning light and held his tiny hand through every fever and scraped knee. The hardest part wasn't the diapers or the tantrums. It was explaining why his mom wasn't around. He didn't ask much at first. Kids don't when they feel safe. But by the time he turned 5, he started noticing things. Birthday parties with 2 parents, pickups where moms waved from SUVs. He'd ask, "Where's my mom?" And I'd always say the same thing. "She loves you. She's just not here right now." I never lied. I just didn't tell the whole truth. Micah had a quiet strength. Sweet, curious, always watching. He loved puzzles and nightlights and sitting in my lap even when his legs got too long. He used to whisper, "I love you, Grandma," before bed every single night. That boy had a heart too big for this world. We had a rhythm. School, dinner, bedtime, doctor's appointments, Saturday library trips, Sunday cartoons. I clipped coupons, packed lunches, made sure he had what he needed. He didn't just live in my house, he lived in my soul. And then, out of nowhere, Sierra came back. It was a Sunday afternoon. I remember because I was making cornbread and Micah was playing with his toy dinosaurs on the living room rug. There was a knock on the door, light but firm. When I opened it, there she was. My daughter, 8 years older, a little thinner, but smiling like we'd just spoken yesterday. "Hey, Mama," she said, holding up a brown bag of takeout. "I brought Chinese. Thought we could catch up." I stood there stunned. My hands were still dusted with flour. Micah peeked from behind my leg, looking up at this stranger who smelled like hairspray and expensive soap. She crouched to his level. "Hi, Micah. I'm your mom." He didn't say anything, just stared, eyes wide. She stayed for dinner, told stories, laughed, said she'd gotten clean, said she was working the front desk at a beauty salon and going to church again. "God turned me around, Mama," she said, her hand over her heart. "I want to make things right." Micah warmed up to her quickly. Kids are like that. She brought him a box of Lego sets the next visit, started showing up more and more. Soon, she was picking him up from school once a week, then twice. She started asking questions. "What time does he go to bed? Is he allergic to anything? Do you have his insurance info?" I thought it was normal. A mother trying to reconnect. I remember one night she offered to read him a bedtime story. He sat in her lap. I watched from the hallway as she turned pages, and he leaned into her arm. For a moment, I felt like an outsider in my own home. I should have felt relief. But what I felt was fear, a cold, creeping sense that something was shifting under my feet. She started calling herself Mom around the school, too. I heard it from Micah's teacher first. "So nice that his mom is back in the picture," she said cheerfully during pickup. I smiled tightly and nodded, not correcting her. What was I supposed to say? One evening, Sierra showed up with a manila folder in her hand. "Hey, Mama, I've got some paperwork from Micah's school," she said. "They're updating the records for next semester. I just need your signature so we can get him on my insurance. It'll save you some money." I looked at the papers, lots of legal language, some government seals. "This seems like a lot for insurance," I said. Sierra laughed. "You always worry too much. It's just school docs, nothing serious. I already signed my part. We're just adding you as a secondary contact." Micah was watching us from the hallway, holding that same little Lego man she'd given him weeks earlier. I signed. One signature, one pen stroke. I thought I'd sign to save a few dollars. What I didn't know was how much it would cost. I went to bed that night with a strange knot in my chest. Something didn't sit right, but I told myself I was just being paranoid. I didn't know I had just signed myself out of my own grandson's life. The next morning, I woke up early and sat in the kitchen sipping weak coffee. The house was quiet, except for the ticking clock above the stove. I kept looking at that folder she'd brought. It was sitting on the counter where I'd left it the night before. I hadn't even made a copy. I picked it up and flipped through it again. Some pages were missing now. She'd taken most of them after I signed. Halfway down the stack, I'd noticed Form 22B in the footer, sandwiched between school contact updates and an emergency contact sheet. What kind of school document takes your only copy? I tried to call her. No answer. Texted, no reply. Micah came in rubbing his eyes, asking for cereal. I smiled, trying not to let the unease show on my face. I made him breakfast, packed his lunch, kissed his forehead before he left for school. He didn't know anything was wrong. He trusted me, and I had trusted her. That evening, Sierra finally responded. "Sorry, long day, all good? Talk tomorrow." That was it. No mention of the papers, no reassurance, just those vague words that did nothing to settle my nerves. I went online that night and searched phrases I'd seen on the documents. Guardianship relinquishment, Form 22B, private adoption consent. My chest tightened with every link I clicked. I didn't sleep at all. I sat in Micah's room, watching him breathe in the dark. His hand clutched the edge of his blanket. His nightlight glowed soft blue against the wall. I wanted to reach into time and take back my signature, rip it off the page like it never happened, but I couldn't. Something had shifted. I just didn't know how deep it ran yet. The next week felt like walking through someone else's life. Sierra was everywhere, calling Micah's teachers, organizing playdates, making herself visible at school events. People started assuming she'd always been around. I overheard a parent say, "Oh, that's Micah's mom. She's so involved." And I just smiled like my heart wasn't breaking. She had a way of talking that made you feel like you were being unreasonable for doubting her. Always laughing, brushing things off. When I brought up the paperwork again, she said, "You really don't trust me, huh?" Then she'd changed the subject. "Look, I bought Micah a new backpack. His old one was falling apart." Micah was happy, though. Or at least he seemed that way. He didn't talk about Sierra much, but he did start asking to call her more often. He'd show me little toys she bought him, drawings he made at her place. Mama Sierra, he called her once, and then looked at me like he'd done something wrong. I didn't say anything. I just nodded. What else could I do? One afternoon, I picked him up from school and he looked confused. "Why didn't Mommy pick me up today?" I froze. "She had to work," I lied. But I felt something shift. That one word, Mommy. He'd never used it before. Sierra started talking about joint holidays. "I think Micah should have Thanksgiving at my place this year," she said casually, like she wasn't suggesting splitting him down the middle. "You've had every year so far, right?" Seems fair. Fair. That word stuck in my throat like a fishbone. What was fair? Was it fair that I raised him while she partied? That I clipped coupons while she disappeared for a decade? That I cried myself to sleep over doctor's bills while she showed up with salon nails and fancy bags? I didn't say all that. I just said, "We'll talk about it." She kept pushing. Every conversation was a chess move. And I was always playing catch-up. One night, she showed up unannounced. It was raining hard. She had Micah with her, soaked through from head to toe. He wanted to come home, she said, handing me his backpack. Didn't want to stay the night. She looked irritated. Her hair was frizzed. Her eyes darted. Micah wouldn't say what happened, just hugged me tight and asked if I could make grilled cheese. After she left, I checked his bag. It was full of new clothes with tags still on them, shoes he'd never worn, a toothbrush, travel-size soaps. It wasn't a sleepover bag, it was a move-in bag. People don't pack fresh toothbrushes for a sleepover. They pack them for a switch. I didn't sleep that night either. I started writing everything down, every visit, every conversation, every strange comment. I bought a little spiral notebook from the dollar store and kept it in my kitchen drawer. Sierra never saw it. I made sure of that. She was building something behind my back. I could feel it. Then one morning, Micah came downstairs with a flyer in his hand. "Mommy says I'm going to a new school soon. This one has a big playground." A new school? I hadn't heard a word about it. I called Sierra, straight to voicemail. I texted her. No reply. I waited 2 hours before she finally called back, acting confused. "Oh yeah, forgot to tell you, I'm thinking of switching him next semester. Better district, better everything." "Better for who?" I asked. "Better for all of us," she said. Then she hung up. I stared at the phone in my hand for a long time. Something inside me was unraveling. Later that week, I called Micah's current school. I spoke with the school secretary, Ms. Rivera. I told her I was his legal guardian and wanted to confirm that no records had been transferred. She sounded confused. "Oh, I think that's been updated," she said. "His mom submitted everything 2 weeks ago. You're not listed on the account anymore." My blood ran cold. "Can you check again?" I asked, my voice trembling. She paused. "I'm sorry. I don't think I'm allowed to discuss his file with non-guardians. Do you want me to have his mother call you?" I hung up. I didn't scream. I didn't cry. I just stood there in my kitchen, clutching the phone to my chest like it was the only thing keeping me upright. Micah came home that afternoon like nothing had changed. He sat at the table eating graham crackers and talking about dinosaurs. I smiled. I nodded. But inside, I was sinking. I checked his backpack that night and found a folder labeled Enrollment Packet. Inside was a half-filled registration form for a charter school across town. The parent signature space was already signed, not by me. The handwriting was Sierra's, sloppy, rushed, curling the B in Bernice like a child mimicking cursive. She was forging my name, stealing him one line at a time, and I was watching it happen, too stunned to stop her. I called the legal aid center the next morning, not because I was sure I had a case, but because I didn't know what else to do. I spoke to a woman named Sherry who listened patiently as I stumbled through my story. She didn't say much at first, just asked me to slow down and repeat everything, names, dates, anything I could remember. "Do you have anything in writing?" she finally asked. I told her about the school documents, about the flyer, about the signature that wasn't mine, and I mentioned the text, the one Sierra sent when she handed me those first forms. "Don't worry, Mama, it's just a school doc, nothing serious." Sherry paused for a long time. "That might be something," she said quietly. She scheduled me for a phone consultation with one of their attorneys, a man named Caleb Price. "He specializes in elder law and guardianship fraud," she said. "He'll know what steps to take." I wrote his name down 3 times just to make sure I wouldn't forget it. That night, I printed out every text thread I had with Sierra. I copied the message, highlighted it. I even took screenshots of our call logs. I didn't understand the law, but I knew what betrayal looked like, and I was holding it in my hands. The next morning, I didn't send Micah to school. I told him we were having a grandma day. We baked cookies, watched his favorite movie, played board games. I watched him laugh and giggle like nothing was wrong, and all the while I kept thinking, how do I tell him what's happening? I didn't. Not yet, because I didn't know how it ended. But I knew one thing for certain now. Sierra wasn't just back. She was trying to erase me, and she was almost done. The man who answered the phone had the kind of voice that made you feel heard. Caleb Price, Legal Aid Services. How can I help? I introduced myself, gave him the case number Sherry had provided, and started telling my story. Every detail I could remember, from Sierra's sudden reappearance, to the school form she handed me, to the signature that didn't feel right, and that text message I couldn't stop rereading. He didn't interrupt, just listened, typing now and then. So just to confirm, he said gently, you raised your grandson since birth, and recently signed some documents your daughter presented, which turned out to be adoption consent papers? Yes, I said, and I didn't know what I was signing. I wouldn't have... He cut in, not unkindly. I believe you. The issue now is what we can prove. I told him I'd saved the text, that I had copies of some of the documents and had even started keeping notes. He asked me to email everything right away. The text message may be crucial, he said. It shows a pattern of deception. Then I told him something I hadn't said out loud, not even to myself. I think she's lying to Micah, telling him I don't want to see him, that I'm sick. Caleb didn't say anything for a moment. That's serious, he said. If she's isolating him, manipulating his perception of you, that's emotional abuse. Combined with possible forgery, we might have grounds for fraud. He set a meeting for the following Tuesday. Bring everything, he said. Texts, documents, that timeline you mentioned. The more details, the better. When I hung up, I stared at the phone for a long time. My hands were shaking, but not from fear, from relief. I had someone in my corner now. The next few days, I became my own private detective, Shamsi. I dug up every email, every paper Sierra had ever left behind. I printed our full text thread and highlighted the one that started it all. Don't worry, Mama, it's just a school doc. I copied call logs, old permission slips, even receipts with her signature. I wanted to be ready. When I walked into the legal aid office that Tuesday, I was holding a 3-ring binder packed with more evidence than I thought I'd ever own. Caleb greeted me in the lobby. He was younger than I expected, maybe mid-30s, dressed in rolled-up sleeves and no tie, but sharp. We sat in a quiet conference room. As he flipped through the binder, he kept nodding, asking follow-up questions, scribbling notes on a legal pad. He moved slowly, carefully. The text alone could make a judge reconsider the paperwork, he said, tapping the printout. And this, he pointed to the signature on the enrollment form, is not yours, right? Absolutely not. Then we're dealing with falsification. This isn't just a family dispute, it's potentially criminal. I nodded, afraid to say it out loud. But hearing him say it made it real. Caleb outlined the next steps. First, we'll file a motion to stop her from moving Micah to another school, especially since you're still listed on several medical and academic records. Then we'll begin building a fraud case to challenge the adoption based on deceit. He paused, folding his hands. But we need to be strategic. If she senses you're fighting back, she might pull him completely, or vanish. That word landed like a punch. She's done it before, I whispered. She could do it again, and this time she'd be within her rights, because I gave them to her. No, he said firmly. You were manipulated. You have the proof, and now we're going to use it. Before I left, he gave me a checklist. Start collecting anything she's given Micah. Handwritten notes, school documents, signed forms. We'll compare handwriting. Keep it all secure. That night, I tucked Micah in and sat beside him for a long time. He looked so peaceful, unaware of the storm swirling outside his little world. Grandma, he mumbled, do you think Mommy likes my new school? I froze. She told you you're switching schools? He nodded sleepily. She said it's a secret. I kissed his forehead and whispered, I'm gonna fix this, baby. The next morning, I stood in his room, scanning his shelves. Tucked inside one of his books was a sticky note that read, Keep this at Mommy's house, don't show Grandma yet. Her handwriting. That was the moment I knew. This wasn't just about custody anymore. This was a campaign, and I wasn't going to lose. That evening, I sat at my kitchen table with a cup of tea I never touched. The binder lay open in front of me like it held my entire life. In a way, it did. Each printed message, every photocopied form, it was more than paper. It was my fight, my love for Micah in black and white. I added a new section, manipulative incidents. I wrote down every moment Sierra had undermined me in front of him. Every, your grandma forgets things. Every, it's better if I handle this. Every quiet erasure of my role. Caleb had told me, patterns matter in court, so I made sure to map them out. The next morning, I stopped by the school. Ms. Rivera, the secretary, looked up with surprise. I thought Sierra was handling the transition paperwork, she said. I forced a polite smile. We're co-parenting now. I lied. Just wanted to stay in the loop. I wasn't about to let Sierra walk into that office like I didn't exist. Micah deserved more than a grandma erased by pen and paper. He deserved truth, stability, love that didn't manipulate, and I was ready to fight for all of it. By the time Sierra got the official court notice, I had already shifted from scared to steady. Service hit at 2:11 p.m. I watched the tracking update like weather before a storm. There was no going back now. Caleb had filed the injunction to block any school transfers, and it was stamped, notarized, and on record. The moment Sierra saw that envelope with the court seal, she called me, furious. What the hell is this, Mama? She snapped. I held the phone away from my ear. You really think you can take me to court? You signed those papers. You don't get to change your mind just because you're having second thoughts. I stayed calm. You lied to me. There was a pause, just one beat, and I could hear it, fear creeping in. You think a judge is going to believe you over Micah's mother? I think a judge is going to read your text. The one where you said it was just school paperwork, the one you sent before the adoption. Silence, then a click. She hung up. That was the last time she called me directly. From then on, everything came through her lawyer. Suddenly, she had one. The tone shifted. No more gifts for Micah. No more smiling at drop-offs. Now she acted like I was a stranger again, like the past 8 years had never happened. I got a letter from her attorney 2 days later, claiming I was harassing her, that I was mentally unstable, and that I had a long history of overstepping parental boundaries. It was so wild I laughed out loud. But then I saw the line that made my blood go cold. Effective immediately, Bernice Holloway is not permitted to contact Micah Holloway, minor, directly or indirectly, pending further review. I wasn't allowed to speak to him, to see him, to write him a letter. He was still living just 6 blocks away, and I couldn't even wave at him. Caleb filed an emergency response. He said the timing of their letter, right after our injunction, made it look retaliatory. But still, the damage was done. For 2 weeks, I didn't hear Micah's voice and didn't know if he was okay. Didn't know if he was scared or confused or crying himself to sleep. I barely slept either. Every night, I sat in his room holding one of his stuffed animals, praying to whatever was listening. This wasn't just about legalities anymore. This was war. Caleb pushed the court to expedite our case. We need to show the judge there's a pattern here, he said. This isn't a misunderstanding, it's a power grab. He helped me prepare an affidavit, 6 pages of dates, quotes, screenshots, and timelines. It felt like writing a thesis on my own heartbreak, but I got it done. And then, something unexpected happened. I got a call from the school secretary, Ms. Rivera. She didn't say much. She knew she had to be careful. But she did say one thing that made my stomach turn. Mike has been withdrawn, effective last Friday. I checked the calendar. That was the day after Sierra received the court filing. She'd pulled him from school the moment she realized the law was catching up. She didn't say where she was taking him, Ms. Rivera added quietly, but he seemed confused. He asked for you. The question wasn't whether he knew who I was, it was whether a court would remember. That broke me. Caleb warned me this might happen. She's trying to vanish legally now, he said. We have to move fast. He drafted an emergency motion to locate Micah. Since I had acted as his de facto guardian for nearly a decade, we had grounds to request a court order for his whereabouts. Sierra's lawyer pushed back, of course, claimed it was a violation of privacy, but the judge agreed to hear our motion. The court date was set for the following Thursday. I spent the next few days preparing like I was going into battle. Caleb helped me organize everything. Color-coded tabs, printed emails, highlighted texts. He even showed me how to answer questions on the stand. You've got this, Ms. Holloway, he said, placing a hand gently on my shoulder. You're not just fighting for you, you're fighting for him. I nodded, but truthfully, I was terrified. Terrified I wouldn't get to him in time. Terrified she'd change her number, disappear across state lines, make Micah believe I abandoned him. But I also knew one thing. If I didn't fight now, I'd regret it for the rest of my life. That night, I couldn't bring myself to eat. I sat on the living room floor with photo albums open around me. Baby pictures, birthday parties, Christmas mornings where Micah wore those silly-footed pajamas. I traced his little face with my finger, memorizing every smile. I wrote a letter I couldn't send. Micah, it began, if you're reading this one day, I need you to know I never stopped loving you. I never stopped trying. Everything I'm doing is to make sure you know the truth. I sealed it in an envelope and tucked it into my Bible. The morning of the hearing, I dressed carefully, blue blouse, black skirt, nothing flashy, just strong. I wanted the judge to see a woman who raised a child, not someone to be erased. Outside the courthouse, Caleb met me with a nod. Just tell the truth, he said. You don't have to be perfect. You just have to be honest. I took a deep breath before walking inside. The room was small but felt heavy with tension. Sierra was already seated, flanked by her attorney, eyes narrowed like I was the one on trial. Micah wasn't there. Not yet. The courtroom felt colder than I expected. Maybe it was the nerves, or maybe it was the way Sierra wouldn't look at me. She sat across from me like I was a stranger. I'd known her since the moment she was born, and now she looked through me like I was nothing. Caleb leaned in. Stay focused. She wants you rattled. The judge entered. A stern woman with silver hair pulled into a knot. Thursday, 9:30 a.m., courtroom 3B. My heartbeat kept time with her steps. She adjusted her glasses and said, This is case number 47A, emergency hearing regarding minor child Micah Holloway. My heart slammed in my chest. Caleb stood. Your Honor, my client, Miss Bernice Holloway, has raised Micah since birth. The mother, Miss Sierra Holloway, returned after nearly 8 years and secured adoption documents under false pretenses. We asked the court to review the circumstances and reevaluate the transfer of parental rights. Sierra's lawyer stood. Objection! Those documents were signed voluntarily. The judge raised her hand. We'll hear both sides. They called me to the stand. I swore in, sat down, took a breath. Caleb guided me gently. The timeline, the text, the forms, my relationship with Micah. The judge listened carefully, taking notes. Then Sierra's attorney stood. Miss Holloway, is it true you've had health issues in the past? Yes, I had knee surgery last spring. And memory issues? No, I'm old enough to remember exactly who lies to me. A ripple went through the room. Even the judge cracked a smile. She continued, Did you ever express to your daughter that caring for Micah was overwhelming? I said I was tired, not that I was giving up. And yet you signed the paperwork. I signed something I didn't understand because I trusted my daughter. I looked straight at Sierra. She still wouldn't meet my eyes. Then Caleb introduced the text. The judge read it aloud. Don't worry, Mama, it's just a school doc, nothing serious. The room went quiet. This message, Caleb said, was sent immediately before Miss Holloway signed what turned out to be a consent form for full adoption. There was no mention of legal guardianship being revoked, no disclosure, no explanation. The judge turned to Sierra. "Did you misrepresent the nature of these forms to your mother?" Sierra stood. "She's confused. She's old. I was just trying to make things easier for everyone." "Did you tell her she was signing adoption consent?" I don't remember the exact words." "That's unfortunate," the judge said, "because your words are right here, in writing." We broke for recess. Outside the courtroom, I sat sipping water from a paper cup. That's when I saw him, Micah, walking down the corridor holding a caseworker's hand. He looked smaller than I remembered. When he saw me, he froze. Then his eyes welled up. "Grandma?" I knelt down, arms open. He ran into them like always. The caseworker nodded. "He'll be asked a few questions in chambers. No pressure." I bent down. "Be brave, just tell the truth." He nodded. Then they led him away. Back in court, the judge returned with her ruling. In reviewing testimony and evidence, it's clear that the consent was obtained under misleading pretenses. Custody transfer is hereby suspended pending further investigation. Sierra exploded. "You can't do this. He's my son." The judge banged her gavel. "And she is his mother, too, in every way that counts." Outside, Micah waited for me again, still in his little dress shoes, hands clutched to his sides. He ran up and hugged me. "Can I come home now?" he whispered. I kissed the top of his head. "Soon, baby," I said. "We're almost there." The days after the hearing felt like walking through a house after a storm. Things were still standing, but nothing was quite the same. Micah wasn't back home yet, but at least now I was allowed to see him. Supervised visits at the family center downtown. It wasn't ideal, but it was something. I'd take anything that let me see his face, hear his voice, hold his hand. The first visit, he ran straight into my arms. The counselor had to remind him to slow down. I sat on the couch, and he curled into my side like he'd never left. "I missed you so much, Grandma," he whispered. I kissed his forehead. "Me too, baby, so much." He had a new backpack, one of those trendy little tablet things kids use. His hair was cut different, and he had a new hoodie that didn't smell like my laundry detergent. But underneath it all, he was still Micah. He asked if I was mad. I said no. I said grown-ups sometimes mess things up, and the job of love was fixing what's broken. Caleb called later that night. "We've got a good start," he said, "but Sierra's not backing down. She's appealing the suspension. She's fighting for full rights again." Of course she was. "She's claiming you poisoned Micah against her." I nearly dropped the phone. "What?" "She submitted a declaration saying Micah only prefers you because you manipulated him with gifts and guilt." My jaw locked. That boy loves me because I raised him, because I was there. I know, but we have to prove it. Judges want clean lines, paper trails. I didn't sleep that night. Instead, I got to work again. I made copies of every school award I'd attended, every parent-teacher note with my name on it. I pulled birthday cards he'd made with, "I love you, Grandma," scrawled across the front. I dug out the framed art projects from the hallway wall. It became a second binder, this one labeled History. The next visit with Micah, I brought him a peanut butter cookie from his favorite bakery. The counselor almost didn't allow it, but I'd cleared it in advance. Micah took one bite and smiled. "Tastes like Saturday." It nearly broke me. "Do you like being at Mommy's place?" I asked carefully. He shrugged. "It's okay. She says I'll go to a new school soon. But I liked my old one better." "Why?" "Because my teacher knew you, and you always came to lunch days." Another thread to pull. Caleb told me to write down everything Micah said. Not to coach him, just to document. If it ever comes to child testimony again, these details help. So I filled a notebook. I called it Micah's Words. Every visit, every phrase, every moment. Then something strange happened. One afternoon, I noticed bruises on Micah's arms. faint but visible. I didn't say anything right away. I didn't want to scare him, but I asked gently, "What happened here, baby?" He looked away. "I fell." "Where?" He hesitated. "The stairs." I told the counselor before we left. She nodded gravely and wrote it down. "You did the right thing." If love is steady, then proof had better be too. That night, I emailed Caleb. He replied in under 10 minutes. "We'll file for a welfare check immediately." 2 days later, Sierra blew up again. She left a voicemail screaming, "How dare you send people to my house? You're trying to paint me like I'm abusive. You're sick, Mama. You need help." I saved the voicemail, forwarded it to Caleb. "Let her scream," he said. "You're doing everything by the book." The judge approved expanded visitation while the welfare review was pending. And that's when I saw the shift. Micah started asking about home. "Is my room still the same? Do you still have my blanket? Can I come back after court?" I answered each one carefully. Yes, and we'll see, sweetheart." But in my heart, I was already preparing the room. Fresh sheets, his favorite nightlight, the books he liked me to read in my silly grandma voice, the blanket with his name embroidered on it, still folded at the foot of his bed. I dusted the shelf with his dinosaur models. I checked the drawer where he kept his puzzles. I fluffed his pillow. It wasn't over, not by a long shot, but hope had moved back in. 3 days after the welfare check, Caleb called with an update that made my chest tighten. "They flagged the household," he said. "Nothing definitive, but enough concerns that a follow-up is scheduled." "What kind of concerns?" I asked. They noted emotional instability. Micah showed signs of stress, and there were inconsistencies in Sierra's responses. I sat down, suddenly cold. "So what happens now?" "Now we push harder. Now we show them why he belongs with you." It felt like we were moving through molasses, slow, deliberate, exhausting, but every inch counted. Caleb helped me prepare a new affidavit that included the bruises, the voicemail, the school withdrawal, and the statements Micah had made during our visits. Meanwhile, Sierra started playing defense. She suddenly posted photos of her and Micah at a pumpkin patch, smiling for the camera. She changed her profile picture to one of them laughing over hot cocoa. It was all performance, all image. I recognized the pattern. She was spinning a version of herself for the courts, trying to look like the picture-perfect mother. But Caleb knew better. "She's reacting," he said. "That means we're getting close." Then, something unexpected happened. Micah's school called. Not the new one Sierra tried enrolling him in, his old one. Ms. Rivera. The school secretary left a voicemail saying a package had arrived addressed to Micah, from a pen pal program he was part of. She sounded hesitant. "I know the situation's complicated," she said, "but it's marked urgent," and he mentioned his grandma in the letter. She forwarded me a scanned copy. Micah had written to a boy in Colorado saying, "My grandma is my favorite person. She packs my snacks better than my mom. I hope I get to live with her forever." That sentence, unfiltered, uncoached, cut through everything. I cried reading it. Caleb printed the letter and filed it as supplemental evidence. We were building something now. Brick by brick, truth by truth. The follow-up welfare check took place quietly, without notice. I found out 2 days later the social worker had marked the case for continued monitoring. Sierra hadn't failed the check, but she hadn't passed it either. That same weekend, during one of our supervised visits, Micah told me something that chilled me to the bone. "She doesn't let me sleep with my nightlight anymore," he whispered. "Why not?" "She says I'm too old, but I get scared sometimes." My hand clenched. Caleb filed another petition for emergency temporary custody based on psychological impact and emotional neglect. Sierra responded by going full scorched earth. She filed a motion claiming I was spreading lies to manipulate Micah, that I was an unstable senior with an obsessive attachment. "She's going to try to flip the narrative," Caleb warned. "It's what abusers do." That word made my stomach flip. But he was right. Every time I got closer to pulling Micah back into safety, Sierra would find a new way to twist the knife. Then came the email. From Sierra, sent directly to me. "I don't know why you're doing this. I gave you 8 years. That should have been enough. He's mine now. Let go." I stared at it for a long time. 8 years. That's how she saw it. Like I was borrowing him. Like love had an expiration date. I forwarded it to Caleb. "This is huge," he said. "It proves intent. And entitlement." Meanwhile, I kept showing up. Every visit, every note, every minute I was allowed to spend with Micah, I was there. Fully, presently, patiently. And Micah? He started changing too. He asked more questions. "Why did Mommy say you didn't want me anymore?" "Is it true you're not my real mom?" And I had to answer without anger, without judgment. "No, baby. I always want you. Always. And no. I didn't give birth to you, but I've loved you every single day." He looked up at me and said, "That's what counts, right?" I nodded, tears in my eyes. That night, I lit a candle by my window like I used to when Sierra first ran off years ago. This time, it wasn't for her. It was for Micah. So he'd know. No matter what they said, no matter where he went, his way back home was always lit. The courthouse looked different the day of the final hearing. Not physically. It was still the same beige walls, the same squeaky doors. But the air was different. Thicker, weighted. Everyone seemed to walk a little slower, speak a little softer, as if the walls themselves were holding their breath. I arrived early with Caleb, binder clutched to my chest. I wore the same blouse I'd worn the day I met Micah in the hospital, sky blue with pearl buttons. It was faded now, but it still felt lucky. Sierra was already there when we entered. She looked polished, like a woman going to a magazine interview. Pressed blazer, fresh curls, a new necklace. Not a single sign that she was unraveling behind the scenes. But I saw it. The tightness in her jaw, the fidgeting with her pen. She wasn't winning anymore, and she knew it. Micah was brought in through a side hallway, holding the caseworker's hand. He wore a little gray suit and black shoes that didn't quite fit. His eyes searched the room until they found mine. And even though he didn't smile, he nodded, just a little. Like we had a secret language that nobody else in that room could understand. The judge wasted no time. We'll hear closing arguments followed by in-camera questioning of the minor. Caleb stood and delivered our final plea. Calm, clear, factual, but laced with just enough heart to remind the room that Micah wasn't just a case number. He was a boy with a bedtime story, a favorite snack, a missing nightlight. A boy who loved his grandma and was pulled away like a file in a drawer. Sierra's attorney countered with full theater, claimed I was manipulating the court, exploiting Micah's emotions, called me a well-intentioned but intrusive relic of a different generation. Caleb objected. The judge let it slide. Then it was time. The bailiff led Micah and the judge into chambers, private, quiet, away from all the noise. The door closed behind them, and all I could do was sit. My hands trembled so badly I tucked them under my thighs. "He knows the truth," Caleb whispered. "Let him tell it." It was the longest 40 minutes of my life. When they returned, Micah looked tired but calm. The judge's expression was harder to read, but there was something in her eyes, something quieter, softer. She took her seat and addressed the room. This court has reviewed the testimony, evidence, supplemental documents, and the statements provided by the minor child in chambers. Based on the totality of evidence, I find that the original adoption transfer was executed under fraudulent circumstances. Sierra's mouth parted slightly. No words came out. A referral to Child Protective Services for supportive services will also issue. Furthermore, the judge continued, the court finds clear indicators of emotional manipulation and psychological disruption caused by the abrupt severing of the child's primary attachment figure. This court prioritizes the emotional and psychological stability of the child above all. She turned to Sierra. "Miss Holloway, effective immediately, custody is hereby reversed. You will retain supervised visitation rights only, pending further evaluation." Sierra stood. No, you can't do this. He's mine. I gave birth to him." The judge didn't flinch, "and she is his mother in every way that counts." I felt the floor tilt. I couldn't breathe, couldn't speak. I just clutched my binder and stared ahead, afraid to move and wake up from it all. Then Micah turned to the bailiff and asked, "Can I go with her now?" The judge nodded once. He walked straight across the courtroom, ignoring the eyes, the whispers, the cameras, and wrapped his arms around me so tightly I nearly toppled. "You came back," he said into my chest. "I never left, baby." I kissed the top of his head as my tears soaked into his hair. We didn't wait around. Caleb let us out a side door to avoid the press. He handled them with grace, answering questions without giving them the whole story. The real story was ours alone. Micah held my hand the whole ride home. In the back seat, he hummed quietly to a song on the radio, one he used to sing when he was little, sitting in his booster seat, kicking his heels. At a red light, he asked, "Can we stop at the donut shop?" I looked at him in the mirror. "Anything you want." We pulled into the parking lot and bought 2 chocolate-sprinkled donuts, just like old times. Sat on the hood of the car with our legs dangling, the breeze cool but sweet. He took a bite and smiled. "Tastes like before." And for the first time in what felt like forever, I smiled too. We were home, for real this time. It took time to feel normal again. The court ruling might have been final, but the damage Sierra left behind didn't vanish overnight. There were still school meetings to attend, records to update, therapy sessions to schedule. I had to re-register Micah's insurance, open a new savings account in his name, and explain to doctors why I'd vanished from his medical file for months. But through it all, he was home. He danced down the hallway again, sang while brushing his teeth, left Legos on the kitchen table even though I told him not to. I didn't even mind stepping on them. At night, he asked for 2 bedtime stories, one funny, one old, and always from under the same quilt we'd stitched together 2 summers ago. He started therapy a week after coming home. The counselor was gentle and warm, and Micah liked her. He told her about his mom, about the yelling, about the stares, about the way he sometimes had to whisper when he was hungry. I didn't know half of it until then, and he didn't tell me everything, and that was okay. I didn't press. I just held the space. And slowly, something shifted. He stopped flinching when the phone rang. He stopped asking if someone else would come take him away. He stopped checking the front window every time a car pulled into the driveway. One afternoon, he came home from school with a drawing he'd made. It was a house. A blue house with a green door. A woman with gray curls and a little boy holding hands in the front yard. He handed it to me proudly. "It's us." I framed it and hung it above the shoe rack in the hallway, so it was the first thing we saw when we walked in the door. We had visitors, old neighbors, church friends, people who'd kept their distance when things got complicated, but came back now with pies and casseroles and warm hugs. I didn't hold grudges. I understood fear. But I also didn't forget who showed up when it counted. Even Sierra's sister called. She apologized, quietly, for staying silent. Said she didn't know how bad it had gotten. "It's not your fault," I said, "but I hope you check in on her. She needs help. Real help." "Do you think she'll try again?" she asked. I paused. "I don't know, but if she does, we'll be ready." Because this time everything was documented. Every court paper, every file, every lie she told, and every truth we proved. I had the full record, and more importantly, so did the judge. Micah's school welcomed him back like a hero. Ms. Rivera gave him a big hug and said, "We missed your stories." He beamed. He made 2 new friends and started a gardening club. He planted a tomato sprout and named it Harold. "Harold's gonna be tall," he said, "just like me." I hung up his permission slips and artwork on the fridge again. I ordered his favorite cereal. I took him to the barber shop and reminded the barber not to cut it too short. Micah liked his curls a little wild. We celebrated his 9th birthday with cupcakes and a dinosaur piñata. He wore a party hat crooked the whole time and laughed with his mouth wide open. No tension in his shoulders, no looking over his shoulder. That night, as I tucked him in, he whispered, "This was the best birthday." I brushed his curls off his forehead. "You've got a lot more of those coming." He smiled, then asked, "Grandma, are you ever going to go away again?" I turned off the lamp, pulled him close. "No, baby, not ever. Not even a little bit." And he nodded, like he believed it this time, because we were past promises now. We were in the doing, the daily showing up, the showing love in the ordinary, like breakfast, like braiding hair, like reading the same story 3 times because the first 2 weren't enough, like grocery store runs where he sneaks an extra snack into the cart and I pretend not to notice. Love isn't loud, it's steady, it's being there. And after everything Sierra tried to erase, that's what remained. Me, Micah, home. They almost erased us with ink. We answered with paper and presents. Would you have signed those papers if your own daughter handed them to you? And do you think Sierra deserves another chance? Or should she be kept away for good? Let me know what you think in the comments below. If you felt something during this story, if you rooted for Bernice or got mad at Sierra, go ahead and hit that like button. It really helps more people find these stories. Make sure you're subscribed with the bell icon turned on so you don't miss tomorrow's episode. And hey, if you know someone who'd love or need to hear this, send it their way. We've got more stories waiting for you. Tap one of the videos on screen now, and I'll see you tomorrow, same time, same place, with a brand new one. Until then, stay safe, stay kind.